The sky above a summer meadow looks peaceful. Flowers open in the sunlight. Workers move from one bloom to another. Inside the hive, thousands of bees continue a life so organized that it almost seems impossible. But somewhere above the colony, a very different story is unfolding. A male honeybee rises into the air with hundreds of others. He has only one biological purpose: find a queen. And if he succeeds, something extraordinary happens. The mating itself lasts only seconds. Then the male falls from the sky. His body has been fatally damaged, and there is no second chance. Why would evolution create a mating system in which reproduction can mean almost certain death? Is this really a sacrifice? Or is something much more precise happening? Something hidden inside the biology of the honeybee? To understand it, we have to leave the flowers behind and follow the male into the sky. The male honeybee is called a drone. Unlike worker bees, drones do not collect nectar. They do not build the comb. They do not feed developing larvae. They do not defend the entrance of the colony in the same way worker bees do. Their primary reproductive function is to mate with a queen, and that difference begins before the drone ever leaves the hive. A drone develops from an unfertilized egg. This means that, unlike female worker bees, he has only one set of chromosomes. It is one of the strange consequences of the honeybee's reproductive system. The male is not simply a smaller version of the female. He is genetically different from the beginning. As he matures, the drone eventually leaves the colony and begins making flights to areas known as drone congregation areas. These locations can contain enormous numbers of males from different colonies. The queen, meanwhile, makes her own mating flight. And this is where the story becomes remarkably competitive. Hundreds, sometimes thousands, of drones may gather in the same region. They are waiting for a queen they may never see. There is no nest to defend, no flower to collect from, no obvious territory, just open air, distance, and an incredibly brief opportunity. The queen enters the congregation area. The drones pursue her, and suddenly what looked like a peaceful flight becomes one of the most intense reproductive competitions in the insect world. A drone has only a few seconds to succeed, but even finding the queen is not enough. He has to reach her. He has to position himself correctly in flight, and he has to transfer his sperm successfully. For most drones, that moment never comes. They spend their lives developing inside the colony, flying repeatedly, searching for queens, and die without ever mating. But for the few that succeed, something remarkable happens. The drone mounts the queen in mid-air. His reproductive organ, called the endophallus, everts into the queen's reproductive tract. Sperm is transferred, and then the mechanism becomes irreversible. The endophallus does not simply slide back into the drone's body. Instead, tissue and internal structures are forcibly everted and damaged. Part of the reproductive apparatus is left behind in the queen. The drone is separated from her, and within moments, he falls away. The damage is fatal. This is why the famous image of the male honeybee dying after mating is real, but only when we are talking specifically about honeybee drones. And that distinction matters because male bees die after mating is not a universal rule. There are thousands of bee species and their reproductive systems are remarkably diverse. In many species, males can mate more than once and survive. The dramatic death of the male is particularly associated with the honeybee, Apis mellifera, and some closely related honeybee systems. So why did this particular strategy evolve? The answer begins with a problem the queen has to solve. She needs sperm, but she does not need it only once. A queen honeybee may mate with many drones. During one or more mating flights, she can store sperm inside her body for years. That stored sperm can fertilize eggs long after the mating flights are over. In other words, the queen is not simply collecting sperm for the next few days. She is building a long-term genetic resource for an entire colony, and this changes the meaning of the drone's final moments. The drone is not dying because the colony has decided that death itself is useful. He is dying because his reproductive anatomy is built around a mating event that causes catastrophic physical damage. The deeper question is why natural selection would allow such a system to persist, and this is where evolution becomes less intuitive. Natural selection does not design organisms according to what seems efficient or compassionate. It favors traits that, on average, increase reproductive success. For a male honeybee, the evolutionary competition is ultimately about getting his genes into a queen. If mating destroys him afterward, that may have little effect on his individual reproductive success because he has already reproduced. In fact, there is an additional twist. The drone's genes do not necessarily benefit only him. Remember that drones develop from unfertilized eggs and have a single set of chromosomes. The queen, however, can mate with multiple males. Her colony can therefore contain workers who share the same mother but have different fathers. This genetic diversity can be extremely important for a social insect colony. Different paternal lineages can contribute different traits. Differences in behavior, disease resistance, environmental tolerance, and other characteristics can influence how the colony functions. The queen is therefore not just reproducing herself, she is creating a genetically diverse society. And the drones are part of that system. But there is another mystery. If the drone's reproductive organ is damaged during mating, why does it have to happen at all? Why couldn't the male simply transfer sperm and fly away? Scientists have studied the mechanics of honeybee mating for decades, and the answer is connected to the extraordinary physical design of the reproductive system. During mating, the drone's endophallus everts under pressure. Structures on the organ interact with the queen's reproductive tract. The drone's reproductive anatomy becomes mechanically engaged with the queen. After ejaculation, the drone is separated from her. In natural mating, this separation can result in severe internal injury. The drone's body is not designed to recover from it, but the story does not end with the first male, because another drone may mate with the same queen, and another, and another. The queen can mate with numerous males during her mating flight. Each successful male contributes sperm to the queen's reproductive system. This creates an extraordinary reproductive lottery. Thousands of drones may compete. Only a fraction successfully mate. And among those that do, each leaves behind a genetic contribution before disappearing from the population. The queen returns to the colony. The drones do not. For the queen, the mating flight is the beginning of years of egg production. For a successful drone, it is the end. That contrast is one of the strangest features of honeybee biology. But there is something even more surprising. The drone's death is not simply a random accident that happens after reproduction. It is part of a reproductive system shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressure, and researchers have found another consequence of the mating process. The mating behavior of honeybees can involve structures that remain associated with the queen immediately after copulation. A structure known as the mating sign can be visible after mating. For a long time, this raised questions about whether the structure left behind by one male could prevent another male from mating. But the reality is more complicated. The queen does not simply mate once and then become inaccessible. She continues her mating flight and can mate with multiple drones. The reproductive system is therefore not built around one perfect male. It is built around competition among many males, and this competition produces an unusual situation. For the drone, the greatest reproductive success may come from a single successful mating. For the queen, reproductive success comes from collecting enough sperm from multiple males to establish the colony's future genetic diversity. The same event, therefore, has two completely different evolutionary consequences. One individual ends, the colony continues. This is where the word sacrifice can become misleading. It is tempting to say that the drone sacrifices himself for the hive, but that suggests intention. Bees do not make conscious decisions about evolutionary strategy in the human sense. The drone is not thinking, "I will die so the colony can survive." His behavior is the product of inherited biological mechanisms shaped by natural selection. If a reproductive system consistently results in successful transmission of genes, it can persist even when the individual organism dies immediately afterward. There is another important correction. Drones are not necessarily born with the expectation that they will die after mating. Most never mate at all, and those that do mate successfully are not killed by the workers because they have fulfilled their purpose. Their death follows from the physical consequences of copulation itself. After mating, a drone that survives briefly may be severely injured. His reproductive structures have been torn or damaged. He can no longer function normally. The injury ultimately leads to death. Meanwhile, back inside the colony, the queen's story is just beginning. She will use the sperm she collected to fertilize eggs for years. A single mating season can therefore determine the genetic fathers of an enormous number of future workers. Every bee carrying the genes of those males is, in a sense, part of a genetic legacy that continues long after the original drones are gone. This creates a strange imbalance between generations. The male's lifespan after successful mating may be measured in moments. The queen's reproductive lifespan can extend for years, and the genes transferred during those few seconds can continue through thousands of descendants. The event is brief. The consequences are not. But why would the queen need sperm from so many males? Because a honeybee colony is not genetically uniform. Workers with different fathers can have different combinations of genes. This variation can influence how colonies respond to changing conditions. If one lineage has traits that help with disease resistance, while another performs better under certain environmental pressures, genetic diversity can become valuable at the colony level. The queen's multiple mating therefore creates something much larger than a collection of individual offspring. It creates a genetically mixed society, and the drones are the mechanism by which that diversity enters the colony. Seen from this perspective, the strange death of a male honeybee becomes less like a bizarre biological mistake and more like one component of a highly specialized reproductive system. But evolution rarely produces perfect systems. There are costs. The queen risks exposure during mating flights. Drones expend enormous amounts of energy searching for queen. Most never reproduce. And successful mating is so physically destructive that the male cannot simply return to ordinary life. The entire system depends on an extraordinary imbalance, thousands of males competing for very few opportunities, while a relatively small number of successful males contribute genes to future generations. It is a system built around probability, and probability is exactly what makes the ending so unforgiving. Imagine the drone leaving the hive for one final flight. He rises into the open sky. Around him are countless other males. Some will return without finding a queen. Some will never return at all. Then somewhere above the landscape, a queen appears. For one drone, the impossible becomes possible. He reaches her. He mates. For a few seconds, his body performs the function for which it was built. Then the connection breaks. He falls. The queen continues flying. The colony waits. And the genetic material transferred during that brief encounter may remain inside her for years. There is no ceremony, no recognition, no conscious sacrifice, just biology unfolding with extraordinary precision. So why do male honeybees die after mating? Because in the honeybee, mating is mechanically destructive to the male's reproductive system. The drone's endophallus everts during copulation, and the resulting injury prevents him from surviving. But that explanation only answers the immediate question. The deeper answer is evolution. The drone's biological success is measured not by how long he survives after mating, but by whether he successfully passes his genes to the next generation. And once that has happened, his individual survival has little reproductive value. His death is not a decision. It is the consequence of an extremely specialized reproductive strategy, a strategy in which one brief encounter can matter more than an entire lifetime. And perhaps that is the most astonishing part of the story. The drone spends weeks developing. He flies into the sky. He competes against thousands, and if he succeeds, his entire reproductive life can be reduced to a few seconds. Yet those few seconds may echo through an entire colony. The bee that falls from the sky disappears almost immediately, but the genes he carried may continue moving through generations of workers, queens, and future colonies. In nature, survival is not always the final measure of success. Sometimes the most important thing an animal can do is something that happens only once. And for the male honeybee, that single moment is the difference between dying without reproducing and leaving a genetic legacy that can outlive him by years. In nature, survival is not always the final measure of success. Sometimes the most important thing an animal can do is something that happens only once. And for the male honeybee, that single moment is the difference between dying without reproducing and leaving a genetic legacy that can outlive him by years. There are countless stories like this hidden in the natural world, stories that seem impossible until we look closely enough. If you want to discover more of them, subscribe and stay with us, because sometimes the strangest truths on Earth are hiding in the smallest creatures.